of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayana, unto Narayana, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nashtaprayeshu bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavate uttama shloke bhakti bhavati nishti. By regular attendances in the classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering of services to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving services unto the personality of Godhead, who is prized with the transcendental songs, is established an irrevocable fact. Om Ajnanatamirantarasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. I was born in darkest of ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him.
So our verse today
Is
5:10.
5:8. Make sure it's a very auspicious verse, 108. There's only one of these in each cancel, so that's one with the cancel today. And it's also very pertinent to the auspicious occasion of Lakshmi Devi's appearance, and also Hiranyakashipu's disappearance, which we're celebrating today. That's a joke. You get that? This is a prose verse in Sanskrit, so I'm going to ask Venkateshwar, please recite it. No, let's just do these synonyms together, all right? Evam, in this way,
in this way,
Vash, Abadam, nonsensical, Api, Alo, Vashmanam, Api, Naradeva, Mimanam, Kinyakunam, Utsakisal, the ruler, Rajasa, by the material mode of passion, Tamasa, as well as with the mode of grace, Anivindana, being increased, Marjana, by madness, Tirasana, who is to the Bhakshesha, innumerable, Bhagavad Priyaniketam, devotees of the Lord, Pandita, considering himself a very scholar, Saha, that Bhagavan, spiritually most powerful, Jadabharata, Brahmana, fully qualified Brahmana, Brahman Bhuta, fully self-realized, Sarva Bhuta, Shradha, who was the friend of all living entities, Yogeshwara, of the most advanced mystery yogis, Ksharidam, in the behavior, Nahati, in the Namatim, until Indraguna, who was actually experienced, Samanayana, slightly smiling, Iva, like Vidita Samyam, who was free from all material pride, Idam, it is Aha, so.
and translations together.
thinking himself
King Raghunath was once the bodily conception and was influenced by the material nature's modes of passion and ignorance. Due to madness, he chastised Jadabharata with uncalled for and contradictory words. Jadabharata was the topmost devotee and dear abode of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Although considering himself very learned, the king did not know about the position of Brahmana's devotees situated in devotional service, nor did he know his characteristics. Jadabharata was the residence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He always carried the form of the Lord within his heart. He was the dear friend of all living beings, and he did not entertain anyone with perception. He therefore smiled and spoke the following words.
In the previous verse, the king Rahugana chastised Bharat by saying, you rascal, what are you doing? Are you dead despite the life within your body? Do you not know that I am your master? You are disregarding me and not carrying out my order. For this disobedience, I shall now punish you, just as Yamaraj, the superintendent of death, punished the sinful people. I shall give you the proper treatment so that you will come to your senses and do the correct thing. Does this sound like something that would make you smile?
No.
Does Judge Bharat smiling remind you of anyone else smiling at an unusual time? I'll give you a hint, it's in the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Remember when Arjuna was so morose and saying, I can't do anything, I can't fight.
Krishna.
Please instruct me.
Krishna.
Krishna was fine.
Slightly smiling between the armies, Krishna spoke. So, purport by Srila Prabhupada. The distinction between a person in the bodily conception and a person beyond the bodily conception is presented in this verse. In the bodily conception, King Rahugana considered himself a king and chastised Jad Bharat in so many unwanted ways. Being self-realized, Jad Bharat, who was fully situated on the transcendental platform, did not at all become angry. Instead, he smiled and began to deliver his teachings to King Rahugana. A highly advanced Vaishnava devotee is a friend to all living entities, and consequently, he is a friend to his enemies also. In fact, he does not consider anyone to be his enemy. Surya Sarva Dehinam. Sometimes a Vaishnava becomes superficially angry at a non-devotee, but this is good for the non-devotee. We have several examples of this in Vedic literature. Once, Narada became angry with the two sons of Kubera, Nalakubara and Manigriva, and he chastised them by turning them into trees. The result was that later they were liberated by Lord Sri Krishna. The devotee is situated on the absolute platform, and when he is angry or pleased, there is no difference, for in either case, he bestows his benedictions. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. This last sentence is reminiscent of Srila Prabhupada. Those disciples who had the good fortune of being chastised by him. Go ahead and read. Those disciples who had the good fortune of being chastised by Srila Prabhupada always found that afterwards they felt enlightened, or often found. Perhaps not always. Sometimes there was a sense of devastation, but often they were thought, wow, he just chastised me and I feel so ecstatic. And this is because the anger was not coming from a place, it was coming from a place of love, not from a place of enviousness. So anger is the result of an uncontrolled mind. Right? This is explained in chapter 2 of the Bhagavad Gita. Dayato Vishayam Pumsam. Sangate Shukla Jayate. That when we contemplate Dayato, the objects of the senses, what happens? We become?
Lustful?
Before that.
Have desire?
Yes, we get attached. When we contemplate the object of the senses, then I really want to get that. And then, Sangha Sanjayate Kama. So that attachment leads to lust. And?
Lust leads.
Lust leads to anger.
Kama, Krodha,
Krodha.
Vijayate. So anger is the younger brother of lust. And lust has many forms. The gross bodily mating inclination, which is inherent to the material body. Beyond that, it's also in the human society especially. There's lust for power, lust for prestige, lust for possessions. We get fixated on getting something. Oh, I got to have this. Or I'm not going to be happy until I get this certain thing. Or I get this certain opportunity, or I get this certain recognition. Whenever we're uncomfortable because of some unfulfilled desire, this is lust. And then when we don't get what we want, then we get angry. So then anger leads to what? Krodha, bhavati, samoha. What is samoha? Bewilderment as we become irrational. We lose connection with what's immediately going on around us because we're preoccupied with this unfulfilled desire. Samoha smriti vibrama. Smriti means what? Memory, right? So when we get confused and we forget. And what do we forget? We forget all the good lessons of our lives, all the experiences that we've had that have been instructive for us, the mistakes we've made and suffered for, we forget all of it. Smriti Bhadi Samoha Smriti Buddhi Nasho. Buddhi means what? Intelligence, right. And my intelligence is nasho, it is finished, it is destroyed. Buddhi nasha pranasyati. Then our life is completely messed up. So everything begins with the uncontrolled mind. So today we're celebrating Lord Nrsingadev's appearance. Did Lord Nrsingadev appear angry?
Yes.
Very angry. One of his names is Anchamali. Srila Prabhupada gave one of his disciples his name, Amtramalidas. You know what that means? It means one who is garlanded with intestines. Amtramali. Yeah. Pulled out the intestines from Hiranyakashipu and wore them like a garland. Pretty angry. Why was he so angry with Hiranyakashipu?
It's just because he was not an ethical path, and what he did with Prahlad Maharaj.
Yes, what he did with Prahlad Maharaj. That was the reason for his anger. His great devotee. Thank you. Jahantamala ki jai. Hold up a moment. Prahlad was tortured. He was tortured over and over and over again by Hiranyakashipu. Why? Just because he came home from school, his father said, "What did you learn in school today?" And he said, "I learned Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandhanam, Sakyam Atmani Vedanam." Pop. Aren't you proud of me? And of course, Hiranyakashipu had taken birth in this world because of his, he had chosen to be a demon for 3 births. And this was his first time around. So he was very angry at Prahlad. And he chastised Prahlad's teachers, "What have you been teaching my son?" To which the teachers replied, "Okay, we'll make sure to get it right." But then again, the same thing happened. This time Prahlad was instructing his schoolmates. And when the teachers were out, he started getting them into kirtan, telling them, "Hey, my dear sons of demons, why are you wasting your life with all your material pursuits? You should be developing your Krishna consciousness." And they said, what? So what did they say? Anyone remember? What do we say when we don't want to do something on our way?
I'll do it later.
Right, what do we say in South America?
I'll let you know.
Mañana, right? Mañana.
Oh,
I'll do it later. I'll do it later. So this is what representing which mode? Ignorance, right? I'll procrastinate. I'll do it tomorrow. So the tendency in youth is let me enjoy now, and then later I'll worry about all this morbid stuff about growing old and getting sick and dying. I don't have any of those problems right now, so why should I worry about them? But the problem is, if we put off the inevitable, we can never really relax, right? Knowing that we have this difficulty right around the corner. So Prahlad was encouraging his schoolmates like this: don't postpone till tomorrow, which you can start right away. Why? Because if you deal with these things right away, deal with your spiritual life now, then you will be able to enjoy your life in this world by not getting attached to all the things that will cause you this lust, anger, and greed. All these disturbances. Your fathers are here, sending you here to learn how to fulfill your desires. But these desires will not satisfy you. Start with your spiritual life, and then you can deal with the other things. So the boy said, we're so young, Prahlad said, it's always too late to start Krishna consciousness, but it's never too early. It's always too late. You're already behind, even at the young age of 5 or 6. So in this way, Prahlad created a great disturbance in his classroom. And this was too much for Hiranyakashipu. When he heard that, he said, we just have to kill this kid. Let's get rid of him. So he assigned his best asuras to deal with him. And they tried in many different ways to kill Prahlad. Every time, Prahlad was protected by the Lord. So this made Hiranyakashipu more and more frustrated. Now, did Prahlad get angry at any point? He was, so what was the mood? What was his mood?
Surrender.
Surrender, yes. Krishna wants, yes. Mari Krishna Rathi Ke.
Radhe Krishna Hare
Yes. Krishna wants to kill me, no one can protect me. If Krishna wants to protect me, no one can kill me. So in this book he was completely peaceful, which is incredible. Amazing when you think about it. How we could possibly be undisturbed in these conditions. In the faith I was brought up in, there was a great deal of coercion by threat. That if you don't obey, then you will be punished. You will suffer eternally, forever. In a lake of fire. Imagine being thrown into a lake of fire would be a horrible way to die. But imagine being in one eternally. If you don't get your religious belief right, that's where you're going to go. So that kind of threat is not surrender. One may obey out of fear, but that isn't what we're talking about with Prahlad. Prahlad had trust. Krishna would never do anything to me that is not for my benefit. And with that feeling, as Prabhupada writes in the purport, a devotee comes to the point of being the saint. In other words, not doing anything except for the benefit of others. This position of life is freed of the uncontrolled mind, the mind that is constantly drifting off to contemplate the object of the senses. So we have some joy in our spiritual life, but not enough to eclipse the desires. And in this position, we have to battle with the mind on a regular basis. So that's all right. People always ask, like, is there something wrong with me because my mind's always wandering? And the answer is no. That means that's perfectly normal. It's just that there has not been yet sufficient time to let the mind realize that it's no longer in charge. It's no longer the boss. That's why chanting is so important and so helpful. Because over time, if we chant with regularity and devotion, and just doing our best every day, resetting the mind every time it wanders away, in time the mind starts to capitulate. There was a devotee in Mayapur years ago who was Russian, and he did not speak any English, but he was an entertainer for the devotees. So he had been an entertainer, in fact, in the Russian army. That was his duty in the army, to entertain the troops. So he put on a one-man play, entirely in pantomime, didn't speak a word. And in that play, he played three different parts. He played the person, he played an ordinary person, he played a devotee, and then he played the mind. So as an ordinary person, he's going along, and then the devotee comes in and gives him a book, and then he's reading the book, and he's starting to chant, and then the mind is objecting. And so he's playing all three parts very expertly. Finally, the last scene, he comes in as the mind, trudging in a dhoti. Surrender is like that. It doesn't come in a flash of light, it comes gradually over a period of time. Does anyone remember how long Srila Prabhupada said it takes to become purified once you start chanting?
One moment.
40 years. It said 40 years. It could be done in a moment. I mean, if you're the temple coordinator. But for mortal human beings. Srila Prabhupada did say that. It could take us a moment, it could take us 1,000,000 lifetimes, but if we chant regularly, we could expect it to take sometime. So in addition to having enthusiasm for taking shelter of Krishna, having trust in Krishna, having enthusiasm for bhakti, we also need patience. Utsahan nischayat vidharya. Patience is coupled with enthusiasm. They seem like different ends of the spectrum. Generally, if we're enthusiastic for something, we want to do it right away. And if we're patient for something, we're willing to wait however long it takes. So in between those two is determination. I'm going to keep my determination going on a steady platform for as long as it takes. So what does it take to keep our determination on a steady platform? This is where the varnashram dharma comes in. We need to be in the right varna and the right ashram so that we can be steady and consistent. So what is the right varna or ashram for you or for me? They're going to be different. Each individual will have their own situation. The point of it, though, is to understand that we're not going to conquer the mind immediately. And as long as the mind is unconquered, then we have these ramifications, such as anger. How many of you feel like you ever have been made a fool of by getting angry? You ever gotten angry and regretted it later? Yeah? Then what do you have to do? Go back and apologize. Sorry I got mad at you. And the other person says, yeah, I'm sorry you got mad at me too. Anger rarely gives us anything of benefit, right? At best, we try to rationalize our anger. But here we see Jad Bharata had so much reason to be angry, and yet he was not angry at all. He was undisturbed. And this is because he had no vested interest in this relationship with the king. He had nothing to gain from it, and he had nothing to lose from it. He was just taking what life had given him and doing his best. So the king being angry did not make Jad Bharata feel like, now I am out of Krishna's protection. Now I am no longer being cared for by the Lord, whom I'm worshiping him, and he's giving me this trouble. What's going on? Krishna, this is not a good deal. He had none of that because he was so fixed in his confidence that Krishna will protect him. So this is why we celebrate Lord Nrsingadev's appearance day, and why it's so meaningful to devotees, because we know that Lord Nrsingadev is not going to be defeated by any Hiranyakashipu. And Lord Nrsingadev is very partial to his devotees. Remember in chapter 11 of the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna asks Krishna, please let me see this universal form of yours. Now I'm convinced that you're God, so now that I'm in the inner circle, let me see all the splendor and majesty of your divine opulence. So it's kind of on one hand, an understandable request, but on the other hand, it's not exactly devotional. It's more like, oh, okay, Krishna, I want to experience all your psychedelic majesty. So Krishna immediately complied, yes, you want to see? I'll give you these special eyes so you can see. And at first Arjuna is overwhelmed with the beauty of it all, this majesty and splendor. I think the northern lights were visible here.
Yes.
Okay? So it was something very majestic in the sky for a few minutes that we saw. But Arjuna was seeing this vividly in the middle of the day and millions of times more spectacular, millions of times more brilliant, and all the demigods and all their powers and all of this majesty unfolding before him just put him in awe. And that's what he was wanting to do, when he asked in the first place. He wanted to see the majesty and beauty of God. But then he saw something unexpected. What did he see? Well, it's supposed to be
Fight.
form.
Everyone going in his mouth.
Yes, that's right. Yes, he saw this gigantic mouth with very sharp teeth emanating fire, and all of the planets in the universe were recoiling from this heat and the fire. And then he saw all of the loved ones on the battlefield, the ones that he was afraid to fight, and for not wanting to kill them. He saw them all rushing into this giant mouth and being chomped. From the University of Florida in Gainesville, the mascot of the University of Florida is the Gators. The Gators. And when at the games, when their team does well, they do this. We're chomping the opposition. But when Arjuna saw everyone getting swallowed and dashed between the teeth of this universal form, he felt very frightened and very overwhelmed with confusion. What is going on? I was seeing the beauty of God, and now I'm seeing this side of God. And he was very frightened by this fearsome side. Who are you? What is your purpose? To which Krishna replied,
Speaker HG.
no, that's another chapter. Chapter 14. What did Krishna say? Anyone see Oppenheimer?
Now I am that. Restore all worlds.
Yes, I am death, destroyer of the worlds. Time I am. He also said, time I am. So this side of God, Arjuna had not expected to see. This ferocious side. He'd like to see the beautiful side. He felt very friendly with Krishna, but he did not want to see the ferocious side, the scary side, at first. But then when Krishna explained, okay, I am time. I am the death of everyone. That's part of my existence. Then Arjuna became very contrite and very humble and apologetic. Oh, I'm sorry. I was so familiar with you. I would sit on the bed next to you. I would joke with you, and please excuse me. Please forgive me, like a father would forgive a foolish son, or a lover would forgive a beloved, or a friend would forgive a friend. So Krishna did not like that mood in this friend. He didn't like that mood of contrition, of obsequiousness, humility, because this was his friend. Arjuna was his friend. So he said, look, Arjuna, you asked me to show you my universal form, so I did. And now here I am again as Krishna. Okay? This is the form that you know and that you love. So please, chill out. He wants that. Krishna wants that familiar and loving relationship. So after that, then Arjuna was okay. Then he next chapter he begins asking, so tell me how to meditate on you in your personal form. Is this better than your impersonal form? So the point is that fear is part of God's repertoire. He has it. Anger is part of his repertoire. Any emotion that exists, we find in Krishna. Except one. What does Krishna never experience that we experience?
Jealousy.
Jealousy, right? Envy, yes. Exactly. So Krishna why should Krishna be jealous? Who does he have to be jealous of? He said, oh, I wish I could make videos like Paul. Krishna has everything. It is only we who sometimes have envy of Krishna. And that envy is not so gross. It can be very subtle. That envy of Krishna might mean just something as innocent as being in the spiritual world and thinking, oh, I wonder what it would be like to be Krishna. Not that, oh, I really wish I had Krishna's position, but just that mild curiosity. I wonder what it would be like to be Krishna. And as soon as we think that way, then we come to Toronto. We're in that place where we can think ourselves the center of everything and the Lord of all we survey. And our fantasy keeps getting undermined, but we keep trying again and again and again. Until we come to Krishna consciousness. And then we understand, no, I am not the center, I'm not the enjoyer, it is Krishna. So this anger that is born out of the materialistic mentality manifests in the non-devotee on a regular basis. And this is the history of mankind. You know, the wars, the battles, the criticism, just nonstop. Right? Like politicians just fight like dogs and cats all the time, right? And then countries fighting over stretches of land that they will not be able to keep. So much hatred. Yesterday we went to St. Marie? St. Marie. And there was a whole recreation of this Indian village that had been ministered to by some French priests. And the story was initially kind of inspiring because the priests and the Indians, they kind of were interested in each other, they kind of got along, and they shared their respective knowledge. And the priests were thinking, we can make these heathens into Christians. And the Indians were thinking, we can get stuff from these strangers that will make us more powerful against our enemies. And so what ultimately happened was the whole village was wiped out. and the priests were killed by another warring tribe. So the point is that in this world, when we are subjected to anger, we will never have peace. There is no question of being peaceful, either externally or internally. So controlling the mind will lead us to controlling anger. When we get angry, we should know, okay, I am being influenced by the motives. So if we're feeling anger, what should we do?
Fulfilling or controlling?
Hmm?
Fulfilling or controlling the anger?
Did you say fulfill it?
No. To control the anger,
Control the anger?
we must control the lust, and to control the lust, always have lesser than what you need.
Yes, question the desires that come up in the mind. Our thoughts should not define us, in other words. Our thoughts are not us. But when we fall down, which we all do, we fall down this rabbit hole that leads us to anger. And we feel angry with somebody, how can we deal with that? Knowing that, okay, let our mind go. How can we deal with it?
We can be honest that right now we're in the right state to have a conversation and give a timeline. I'll be back in an hour or so. And then come back and honestly express without being violent, like basically using non-violent communication.
Right, especially, so at least the first part, you should understand. When we're angry, we are well advised to give ourselves some time. We might say, as Vishaka said, very honestly, I'm not in a state to talk with you right now. That may be TMI, too much information. You might just say, let me think about that and I'll get back to you. Let me think it over and I'll get back to you. So that way we give ourselves some time to process and decide what is really beneficial for the situation. We have a tendency to, instead of ready, aim, fire, we have a tendency to ready, fire, aim. Okay? So that reactionary expression of anger always puts us in difficult positions. So from this verse and purport, we can just see how trusting Krishna enables us to stop reacting due to anger. Okay, so now some discussion.
I just wanted to say that the first point that you said, I think is so important when you choose between reacting and responding. I think half the battle's won if you don't react and you just take that pause. And I think when you're introspecting, taking that time away, like Vishaka said, that hour, so in that time, if you can question, where is this anger coming from? What's my desire? Am I frustrated at this person, or am I frustrated that my desire is not being met? And I think if you're able to look inwards rather than outwards in that moment and just have that introspective question with yourself, I think that's something that can be helpful.
Yes, exactly. Yes, that I like the word you use, introspection. And where does this anger come from? If we trace it back, ultimately it's usually some kind of egoistic desire, self-centered desire that is not nearly as important as maintaining a nice relationship with somebody. If we get angry, then the relationship is upset, and then we become very obsessed with it. We had a good friendship, and all of a sudden we're angry. You ever experienced this? And then it's very disturbing. It's hard to sleep. It's hard to think about anything else. Therefore, the relationship should always be put ahead of the issue. Okay, thank you. Yes, Prabhuji, you had a...
Thank you so much, Prabhu, for the amazing lecture. So as you mentioned, like the root coiled Hiranyakashipu's intestine and used it as a garland. But also we see like there is some reason that Lord, if Lord is doing anything, there is a reason, because like he can just think of the garland and he can get like billions, zillions of garland in his like. Why did he do that? So?
To make a point, to make a very good point to the source. Yes, Krishna has a purpose for everything he does. From this particular incarnation of Lord Vishnu, he is very angry, he is ferocious, he is overwhelmingly intimidating. And his point is to send a message to the demons. See, like Hiranyakashipu, again, since it's his disappearance day, we should glorify him a little bit. Hiranyakashipu is very knowledgeable about Dharma. Hiranyakashipu was consoling his brother's widow, Hiranyaksha's widow, after he was killed by Lord Varahadev. And in that discussion, he's speaking perfect Atma Tattva, saying, we're not these bodies, and this life is temporary, and consoling her, he was very enlightened. So Hiranyakashipu knew the principles of religion, but as a demon is prone to do, he was determined. He knows Vishnu is God, but I'm going to overcome Vishnu. I'm going to overpower Vishnu. Ravana was the same way, very knowledgeable, but Vishnu is God, and I'm going to show him. So this is a demonic mentality. Far from this initial idea of just being a little curious what it's like to be Krishna. These demons are determined to become Krishna. And they're going to prove it by defeating him. So when Nrsimhadev sends this message that nobody is going to defeat the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And of course he appeared after Hiranyakashipu had gotten every possible insurance policy that he could buy. Isn't it true that anyone here worked in insurance? No? So the thing about insurance companies is they write the policies, oh yes, we'll protect you. And then they have a whole department dedicated to how we can get out of those policies. Right? So you make a claim, the first thing is they send it to that department, look for a loophole here. Oh, sorry, you did report this on time or something like that.
They have a little star at the end of it, conditions apply.
Conditions apply, yes. So Hiranyakashipu had taken out a very expensive insurance policy in which he had great confidence, but Krishna found the loophole. And so that very violent image is part of the totality of our understanding of God. When my sister, who's a very nice lady, came to visit me in the Los Angeles temple years ago. Now this original painting is on the wall there in the temple, and it's about 4 by 6 feet. Big painting, so it's right on the wall. I don't know who did the interior design, but anyway, as I was walking around the temple with her and her husband, all of a sudden we came to this painting, and I saw her grip her husband's hand. What kind of a cult is my brother in? So it reminded me of, everything is based on perspectives. If we understand, if we look at Lord Nrsimhadev, we're on his team, and we're not Hiranyakashipu's team. This is like a beautiful sight. Everything depends on perspective. It reminds me of, in the 70s, there was a great groundswell of opposition against cults. So ISKCON was accused of being a cult, and its members were being kidnapped, and this was it was a very heavy thing. I mean, illegally kidnapping people and then subjecting them to indoctrination against the religion of their choice. It was very violent and crazy. So the academics knew this was quite inappropriate. So the scholars, one scholar in Texas wrote a paper about the dreaded knob neck cult. And in this cult, the members must give up all their worldly possessions, and they're only allowed to see their family one day a year, and they must abandon all their clothes and all wear the same dark religious outfits. And in their private secret ceremonies, they ceremoniously eat the flesh and drink the blood of their founder. So he gives this whole description, and then he says, actually, Nanak is convent, spelled backwards. It's a convent, yeah, that's what it means. The convent's, of course, very respected in society. So, to eat the flesh and drink the blood of your founder, what do they call it, the Eucharist, is that it? Something like that. Anyway, it's one of the ceremonies of Catholicism. Drink of wine and eat a little bread. Yeah, the wafer. And this is horrible when you look at it that way. So similarly to my sister, this is horrible. This is devotees who think, oh, all right, this is very inspiring. Because Lord Nrsimhadev protects. Can I tell you one story about that Lord Nrsimhadev protecting a devotee? One of my godbrothers, Tamahar Prabhu, was out distributing books, and he was in a parking lot selling books to people, and then this man came up to him and said, what is it you have there? Oh, okay. Yeah, I'd like to get one of those. I don't have any money with me. I have my wallet over in my car. Go to my car and I can give you a donation. So they walked over. The car was over at one end of the parking lot, kind of isolated. When he got to the car, he turned around and had a gun. He said, give me all your money. I watched you collect. I want all your money. So Tamahar gave it all to him. And then the man said, now you've seen my face, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to kill you. So Tamahar, in shock, just started chanting very loudly, Namaste Narshingaya Pralaladandayani Hiranyakashipurvakashalatam Kalakaya. And all of a sudden, the man's partner pulled up in the car. He said, get in, and drove away. So he very vividly experienced the power of leadership. There's many instances like that. The point is, we feel very confident that because we recognize who Lord Nrsimhadev is, we are protected. And when we feel trust in Krishna, then it's easier to say no to the petty desires of our mind. It's not worth trading this wonderful relationship with Krishna for the little desires that my mind is coughing up. Okay, any other discussion? Shaka?
Can you share one or two examples from like where Srila Prabhupada got angry at non-devotees
Yes.
and at his disciples, like two different categories?
Yes. Prabhupada was the exemplar of being able to use anger without getting into anger. So one occasion, the devotees in the first group of Westerners who had come with him to India. He'd been preaching in India for 20 years and had one casual follower. At first he was kind of done with India, because when he started getting a reaction in the West, good response. But then he decided to bring some of his Western disciples to India to see if that would inspire the Indian population, because India was tending to follow the West. So in fact, his premonition was very good, and people were very interested all of a sudden when they saw the Western disciples. So he began holding pandals and attending conferences. So there was one such conference. It was a Gita Sammelana. There were speakers on Bhagavad Gita from many different sampradayas or organizations. So because the Western disciples were such an attraction, the organizers of the meeting put Swami Bhaktivedanta at the end of the night, like the big act. So everyone would wait for the end. So in between, there were one Mayavadi speaker after another explaining the Gita in some concocted way, all in Hindi. And Prabhupada and his disciples had to sit there and listen to it. So, of course, the disciples didn't understand. But Prabhupada understood, and he was getting more and more angry, just chanting on his beads quietly. Finally, when it was his turn, he just said, and the audience, by the way, was sitting there quite bored also. So finally, when his sister said to the devotees, just chant. Let's just do kirtan. Like, purify the atmosphere. And so the devotees got up, and they were so glad to finally get up and chant. And the audience was also very glad that something interesting happened. And so the devotees were chanting, and then the audience stood up and started chanting, and then the devotees hopped off the stage and started going up and down the aisles, and everybody was dancing and so ecstatic. And it was a great end to the night. The organizers were very pleased. The Prabhupada was not so pleased. So he told the organizers, tomorrow night, I speak first or we're not coming. We're leaving. And they said, no, okay, we'll put you first. So next night, Prabhupada began, told the devotees to start kirtan, so they stood up on stage and started chanting. And the organizers, remembering the night before, wanted them to get off the stage and run through the audience, to get the audience excited again. So one of them came up and started pulling at the sari of one of the ladies who was in the kirtan. Like, get off the stage, jump in. And Prabhupada saw this man pulling on her sari. He took his kartals and started swinging them like nunchucks. And he came over and was swinging the kartals to scare this man away in front of thousands of people. And so that evening, the organizers came to the devotees and said, Swamiji got angry. So everybody knows that anger is generally not the sign of sadhu. But when the devotee was threatened, Prabhupada showed anger. And that's the difference between like the anger of the pure devotee and the anger of a conditioned soul. The anger of the pure devotee is controlled and applied purposefully, and not because it has overwhelmed. Right? So if we get angry, often it's because of that inability to control our senses. And if we just repress the anger and try to appear like a sadhu, that can only go so far. Then therefore it's better. If we feel angry, just give ourselves time to process, introspect, and try to deal with it that way. Okay, yes, Andrea.
Like from the story, first he was born as Bharat, and he was thinking of this. The only relationship he had was with a deer. He was thinking about deer, and then he became a deer. And after that, he got the birth of Jagabhara. In that life, he was self-realized, so but he knew that keeping relations with people will not be affecting. So he preferred to play dumb and did not keep any kind of relationship with anyone. Today, no matter how many hours we do chanting, puja, but still we just keep on thinking about thousands of things, hundreds of people, and it's hard to get rid of. What should we do? How should we play dumb and get rid of it?
Remember, two things. First, remember, he was a deer in between, right? From Bharat Maharaj, then a deer, and then Jet Bharat. So just want he had that time to consider. And then his Jet Bharat, yes, his idea was that he would be aloof from people just by not engaging. But what do we see? Nonetheless, he's pressed into service. Nonetheless, he is engaging with the king. You see? So we might think that the cure to our anger or other problems is to remove ourselves from the association of other people. And in fact, that's saying it's not my problem, it's because of all these other people that I get angry. And if I'm just by myself, then I won't have anyone to get angry with. Right?
He would have tried to start a movement to purify others to their spiritual state, since he was a self-realized soul.
He did. He did. This is what is happening right now. He's purifying King Rahugana. And by indirectly all of us by reading his teachings. So, you see my point, though? You're saying he fell down, and so next birth, I don't want to have anything to do with people.
Something like that sense.
Yes, but that was ultimately not what happened. So my point is that's not a good strategy because we are social creatures. We are interactive by nature. We only really exist in one sense in relationship to others, right? And when we are alone, then it's hard to really know ourselves. But when we're with others, then everything comes out. Our inhibitions, our arrogance, our anxieties, our anger, all the anarthas manifest when we're with others. When we're just alone in a room, we think, oh, I'm pretty advanced. So when we go outside and then we start feeling all these unwanted emotions, then we can really see where we're at. So this is why ashram life is so very valuable, because it gives us a chance to see our shortcomings, get into little conflicts with others, what we call fifus, false ego flare-ups. They show us our shortcomings, and they show us, and then we're forced to learn how to deal with these emotions. We're forced to evaluate, introspect. And that's a very good thing. It's a very good thing. And being a sadhu doesn't mean just repressing unwanted emotions. It means to actually process them and recognize where they're coming from and nip them in the bud by stopping the contemplation of the objects of the senses. All right, anything else? Yes.
Can we stop the thoughts? Because it's like, well, whatever I've read a little bit, I can say that it's very hard to stop something, but it's easier to divert it.
Yes. It's the function of the mind to produce thoughts. So the more we fill up the content of our mind with spirituality, the more that our thoughts will be of a spiritual nature. So it's garbage in, garbage out. If we're filling up our mind is already the reservoir of all the sensual experiences of this life and many lifetimes past. But if we fill up the mind with positive experiences and positive memories and positive input, then the unwanted thoughts get washed out. But that's a process. It just takes time.
Settle in the higher place.
Yes, right. In the meantime, then we have to exercise the practices of bhakti. And if our mind is not cooperative, that's not surprising. The main thing is just don't let it run the show. So many times devotees tell me that about their problems, and really at the root of them is false ego. So this person didn't respect me properly. You know? What about manina, manadena? They want respect from others, but they want to give respect. That rascal doesn't respect me. And I got it backwards.
In that moment when you are so caught up with what your mind is thinking, that you assume that it's a reality, is there any prompt, is there anything that one can use in that moment to ensure you're not one with your mind or your ego, and you're able to step on?
The best advice is what we were discussing earlier. That's the best advice I could offer. Just first of all, give yourself time. Don't react. Don't indulge the mind. Anger is an indulgence. And we think that by getting angry, we're going to feel better. When just the opposite happens. Anger leads to all kinds of other problems. So this is an emotion that doesn't belong in my spiritual pantheon here. So let me step back and evaluate. Let me make sure not to react to it. Jed Bharat is at this point where he automatically reacts with joy. Oh, I'm so glad you asked. You said this. We don't have to be at that point. But we can understand, we can, just by determination, understand when to react and when to not react. Okay.
Thank you.
Last question.
Just one last question. So as we listened about the story of Prabhupada, where he was listening to all the Mayavadi, and sometimes when talking to like devotees who are new, they have a lot of their friends who are Mayavadi. So at that time we just listen and ignore it. But sometimes the cases happen as like they start talking bad about like our community. For example, last time I know there was, for example, there was one devotee. He was a devotee, but he was from another sampradaya, and he was like, "Oh, you guys open Bhagavad Gita in the trees. That's not a pious place. You are eating this. You are eating that." We know he's wrong. Like at least we are eating it. But sometimes you just got angry, and also there was like another devotee. She was like, okay, so at that time when we had Nityananda Theodashi, so Ekadashi and Dwadashi, we I think fast for the same thing. We are looking at the stars over here. So we had I think fast on Ekadashi, and then the Theodashi was the next day. So we had the fast on Dwadashi for the whole, both of the things. And she was like, "Hey, you fasted on this thing, and how can you fast on Nityananda Theodashi? You guys are really doing something bad. Like that's not appropriate and something like that." So at that case, if we talk to them, we commit a Vaishnava aparad. But if we doesn't just do that, we commit a Guru aparad.
Yeah. Well, if we're hearing somebody speak critically of devotees, we have three choices. One is that we can cut out the person's tongue from the neck of devotee. If that's illegal, then we can leave the place, or we can defeat the person by superior knowledge. So leaving is always an option. Then we don't have to leave rudely. We can excuse me, I have to go make a phone call. But one thing that is not an option is to sit and listen to the criticism. So if we sit and listen to the criticism, we take part in the offense. So how do we defeat by superior knowledge? There's several ways. First of all, we can offer, if it's a person who's being criticized, we can say something positive about that person. So somebody is speaking critically, we don't want to listen to it, and then we say, well, I see this person does this well and does this well. So giving some positive response. My godbrother Jayananda Prabhu, whose disappearance day was yesterday, that was how he would respond to criticism. He would not tolerate somebody was speaking ill on another devotee. So that was one response he would give. Oh, well, he does such and such, does it so well. Reads kirtan so nicely, cooks offering, working very hard. That kind of positive response can often mute the criticism. Somebody's criticizing, oh, you're not following Vedic principles properly, Ekadasi properly, whatever. We can inquire, well, what is your source for information? And at least show that we're reasonable, that we want to understand them, and that's also disarming. You see? This is a way of defeating the person. Like it's questioning in a polite way, like what is your source? And then you have at least the satisfaction of displaying proper behavior. The person goes on criticizing and you can excuse yourself. Okay? But the main thing is to not react with anger. If we react with anger, then we've lost.
People asking such questions or criticizing reflects their own emotional or mental weakness.
Yeah, that's why the advanced devotees see others with compassion. They see others as Krishna's part and parcel. And anger is used very judiciously, and only by somebody who has accepted you as an authority. That's a problem. You get angry at somebody and haven't accepted you as an authority, they just think you're a jerk. It's okay. You're my mentor, please tell me what. And if they've done something that is severe, we may have to criticize them. But that's the thing. When Prabhupada would do that, the devotees would feel ecstatic. Because he was doing it from love, and they knew that he cares about me, therefore he's correcting. Did you